Hello and welcome to Just One More Watch. Welcome to a 2-for-1 review today. Two watches from the same brand, and that brand is brand new to this channel. It is Isotope Watches, a UK-based micro with a unique look, a look all of their own. I've been chatting to Jose, the brand owner, now for a couple of years about getting one in for review. And I assume to make up for lost time, Jose sent me two at once. Now they are essentially the same watch. They're both from the Hydrium range of dive watches, so they're the same underneath, but they look very, very different from each other on top. Both are, however, limited editions, with the vibrant looking burnt tangerine model having been on sale already for a couple of months now. The second colour variant, the stark black, white and red one on the thumbnail, Jose is calling the Judge. Now the Judge launches today. I am the first YouTuber to get their hands on one of these. Jose actually asked me to drop this video on launch day because he expects all 100 of them to sell out pretty quickly. Now you saw the pop-up. This video is sponsored by Isotope Watches. I will therefore leave a link in the description of the video to the Judge's landing page. While you're there, you should probably also check out their Terra Maris GMT. That is one of the best looking microbrand GMTs I have ever seen, with a design like nothing else on the market. I think you can say the same for the Hydrium as well. Now these Hydriums are around the $800 US mark on a rubber strap, so you do pay a little bit extra for that unique design. Let's flip the camera and see what you get for your cash. I think a little context is required. These two make a bit more sense if we have a look at some of Isotope's previous models in this Hydrium X line of divers. Isotope, by the way, has been making watches since 2016, husband and wife team based in the UK. They first launched this Hydrium X model just under a year ago with the watch that became a bit of a breakthrough model for them, the Will Return. Now if this one looks familiar, it probably should. It's Jose's interpretation of the classic Will Return shop sign, as you can see here. I think it's a lot of fun. I think fun is a big driving factor in a lot of what this company does. Alongside the Will Return, they released a model called Blue Knight, a super stealthy and stylized minimalist diver in the same case, but with an enamel dial. Then they returned to the Will Return look, if you see what I mean, for a model they referred to as Blink, cheekily combining the two most overtly gendered colours, blue and pink. All three models were limited to 100 pieces. All three models have now sold out. The two that I was sent to have a look at today are essentially updated colour variants of each of the two previous Hydrium models. The Burnt Tangerine is a far more vibrant and in-your-face version of the Blue Knight, and the watch that launches today, the Judge, is based on the design of the Will Return / Blink, but with the classic red, black and white colour scheme of your common or garden High Court Judge. So that's you caught up, that's you got the backstory then. So as the Judge is the brand new model released this week for pre-orders and shipping early next year, I'll be focusing on that one. I will of course show you plenty of the equivalent shots of the Burnt Tangerine as well though. Which do you prefer? Leave me a comment, let me know which one of these you like the look of most, or do you prefer one of the previously now sold out models? They're the same watch underneath, the same price, and I think they're both a ton of fun in their own way. They're both very nicely packaged as well and come with a 2-year warranty. Now if this packaging looks familiar, perhaps you have seen it elsewhere. I saw it elsewhere earlier on this very month. It's the same packaging as was used by the Furlan Mari that I reviewed at the beginning of September, with the addition of the warranty card nestling in the bottom of the box. It's really nice and it makes opening the box for the first time a bit of an occasion, I think. Now because both watches are essentially the same, I promise I won't keep saying that throughout the video, the dimensions and specifications are very, very close to identical as well. It's a 40mm in diameter, this one, with a total thickness of bang on 15mm, including some heavily domed sapphire crystal, as you'll see. Without the crystal dome, the case is closer to 13.5mm, so it's not quite the cuff buster it would first appear to be, but it is definitely a chunky one. The lug to lug is relatively short though, at 47.2, but it does have 22mm lug width. Now the weight of the two watches are marginally different. The Judge has a display case back and weighs in at 130 grams. The Burnt Tangerine has a slightly heavier closed case back, so weighs in at a slightly heavier 134 grams. Cases are made of 316L stainless steel and finished with a micro bead blasting throughout. The bezel appears smooth from the side, which is quite unusual, but there are enough little sawtooth marks on the upper edge to give you plenty of grip should you need it. Now the heavily domed sapphire crystal features anti-reflective undercoating, and both watches feature sapphire bezel inserts, hence you get that little flash from them when they catch the light. I think that double sapphire just adds to the fun with these two. Now the crown is knurled so it has plenty of grip. There's 300 meters, 1000 feet of water resistance from both, and just the merest suggestion of crown guards. And there are a couple of recurring motifs that you can see repeated again and again across both of these watches. One is Isotope's signature teardrop shape, more on that later. The second is their logo with the letter I on it at the 7. That logo is etched into the crown, as you can see. The finish is very nice overall, and the bead blasting goes with the colours more readily than a raw stainless steel would have, I think. It allows the colours to really sing, to really pop. Bezel action, by the way, is fantastic on both of these watches. It feels chunky and sturdy, 120 click dive style unidirectional of course, sounds great, and there's plenty of grip available. The supplied strap is an FKM rubber Tropic style, therefore perforated with double retainers. It's actually branded with the Isotope name on the tip, features quick release spring bars, and has a suitably chunky bead blasted buckle, again with the Isotope brand name etched into it. It's soft and comfortable and fairly neutral, which I think is good considering the rest of the watch is certainly anything other than neutral. One minor difference between the two is the display caseback or lack thereof. The burnt tangerine one has this stunning, what I presume is oil pressed caseback. Now the diver's helmet and anchor is a real dive watch caseback trope. I assume that was the point, but this is undoubtedly one of the nicest casebacks I have ever seen. The movement is the same in both watches, although you can only see it through the back of the judge, and it's one that I haven't encountered before. It's a Landeron 24. Now when I read the press release for this watch, I got excited. It's not often, after all, I come across a brand new movement in an affordable watch, but when I did some digging, my excitement was relatively short-lived. If it looks familiar, it should do. It's yet another Swiss-made clone of the ETA 2824. The specs should therefore also be familiar. 25 joules, hacking and hand winding, 4 Hz beat rate, and a roughly 40-hour power reserve. And a sharper set of tolerances than you get from a factory ETA, plus or minus 12 seconds per day. I popped each of these onto the time grapher and both were running well within those stated tolerances. This is the first one of these I've seen though, as discussed, so I can't really comment on how they perform long term. But you're probably not buying one of these because of the movement, you're probably buying one of these because you love the way it looks. And I mentioned those two recurring motifs, the teardrop and the letter I. The teardrop features on both as the bezel marker at 12. It's not a triangle or circle, it's a teardrop. It features most prominently on the dial of the burnt tangerine model, obviously, with a large lacrima shape sitting raised from the main dial surface at the same level as that outer chapter ring. It's printed with the model name, the water resistance rating, and automatic in tiny, almost pointlessly tiny script. But check out the hands on the burnt tangerine model. They are also letter I's, and there is yet another teardrop style shape in the centre of that second hand. But there are no hour markings as such on the dial. If you need markings, then you're relying on those small white rectangles on the chapter ring or the small orange squares on the bezel insert. All three hands on the judge, it could be argued, are also teardrop shaped, although I'm not quite sure the smallest hand can legitimately be called the second hand. Perhaps the second stump or the second nub would be more appropriate. It clearly isn't going to help you much with precision timekeeping, but it does let you know that the movement is running. The fact that the bezel has no markings confirms that the judge isn't really about precision timekeeping. If you want that, you can opt for the burnt tangerine or for something else entirely. The judge has a flat printed dial with prominent Arabic hour markers and a minute track sitting inboard of those markings, almost a clock within a clock. Isotope branding is fairly subtle and it has the same 3 lines of text above the 6. It's also nice to see Great Britain printed on the dial of a watch, not something you see very often. So similar but very different than these two. There's a bit more practicality from the burnt orange, but the judge certainly makes a statement with those red hands and that red insert. And on the wrist, I think these two are just as much fun to wear as they are to look at. Definitely chunky. I mean, 130 grams on a rubber strap, that's 10 grams heavier than my Oris 65, which is also a 40mm diver but comes on a full metal bracelet. And 15mm thick is also noticeable, shall we say, but it's supposed to be, so I'm not going to complain about it. The short lug to lug though means that even those with smaller wrists than I have will be able to get away with this one no problem at all. But the weight does mean that you'll most likely be wearing it tight rather than loose because it is going to be a bit top heavy as a consequence. The Burnt Tangerine is marginally heavier, but it's not noticeable on wrist, and they both have plenty of presence. I mean, that should be fairly obvious by now, shouldn't it? There's even a suggestion again of that teardrop shape with the lugs when you look down the wrist at the side profile. And the pocket shots to finish, you get some nice light play from that domed sapphire crystal with the AR undercoating, and the sapphire bezel insert. Again, you can see it catch the light occasionally when I move my wrist around. Fun watches to wear then, definitely quirky, but not Xeric level quirky, if you see what I mean. Moans and niggles. Well, if you live your life by the second, then the Judge is not the variant for you. It does have a second hand of sorts, but really it's little more than an indicator that the movement is running. And the Landeron 24, it's nicely decorated and the stated tolerances are good, but I'd still rather have a base model ETA or Sellita just for the security of having a movement that is a more of a known quantity than this one is. And the lume, frankly, isn't amazing. You know that if you haven't seen the lume video by now, it means that it's not amazing. Both watches look initially very good, clearly two different approaches with more lume on the dial of the Judge and more lume on the bezel of the Burnt Tangerine. You also get bi-coloured lume on that one as well. But when I turn the speed up on them, it doesn't really last all that long, certainly not as long as I would have liked it to. By the time you get to the end of the 20 minutes, if you combine the two, you would have one watch with good lume, but as it is, you've got two watches with slightly iffy lume. Fun and colourful by day, perhaps not quite as fun or as colourful by night. And the price, £700 plus or minus taxes with free shipping mind you. It's certainly not entry level for a diver on a rubber strap, but considering how unique these designs are and how solid the watches are, I think it's actually pretty good value. Clearly the 300 people that bought each of the previous sold out runs of the Hydrium X agree with me. And when I'm using words like fun and quirky repeatedly during a review, I think prospective customers have to have a good think about where a watch like this fits into their collection. Are you brave enough to run one of these as a daily, or is it going to be more of a Saturday night occasional wear type piece? And if so, how much money are you prepared to have sitting in a box 6.5 days a week? Just something I think should be considered if you're picking up something from left field like this one. But overall, I really like both of these. I think they would make great shorts and t-shirts, summer holiday style watches here in Australia, and maybe on a trip to the beach. Life shouldn't be about counting every second of every minute anyway. So there you have it. I'm delighted to finally be able to review an isotope or two isotopes, and they didn't disappoint. Those are two good looking and very well made watches. I know the Judge is the hot new model today, but personally my heart belongs to that Burnt Tangerine number. If you fancy picking up a dive watch that looks like nothing other than what it actually is, you should definitely check out the MW Watches Legato Diver, modelled after a guitar, and the Namika Watches Shirahama, inspired by the streets of Tokyo. Thanks for watching. I will see you again in a future video, I hope.